These days, one of the more frustrating experiences of our day-to-day activities is finding that the internet is not functioning for us as expected in the moment when we want it or need it. Often, the issue is as simple as doing a quick reset on your modem. Either unplug it for 10 seconds or hold that reset button for about 10 seconds and then repower it and wait for your computer or other device to reconnect you to the world. Pretty simple, even if it is a bit annoying. But what if it doesn't work? Do you have any idea what to do next? Or do you just call up your internet service provider and say you need help? In this video, I'm going to try to give you some tools so that you can solve at least some of the problems, some of the issues that you might encounter for yourself, and then be back in the game in fairly short order. This video is about fixing an internet connection that had been working, but now, for some reason, does not. Maybe you don't want to listen to me for 10 or 15 minutes explaining some of the possible points of failure, and if you're impatient and just want a quick fix, if you have fiber optic service, I'll give that to you next. And if it works, I hope you come back and give this video a thumbs up. If it doesn't work, I hope you'll come back and listen to the rest of the video, because maybe there's something else in the video that give you an idea where else to look. So what is the quick fix? If your internet service is provided through fiber optics, try power cycling the ONT. That's it. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle put these words into the mouth of his most famous character: "When you have eliminated the impossible, whatever's left, however improbable, must be the truth." Sherlock Holmes. If there's a limited set of possibilities, the observation and the process of elimination suggested is quite valid. And fortunately for us, there is really only a limited set, a limited number of points of failure in the system that connects us to the World Wide Web. If we can keep this larger picture in mind, then the infinite regression of the minutiae becomes less overwhelming. Starting at the end user and working outward toward the World Wide Web, here are your possible points of failure. Your computer or other device. Your wired or wireless connection to your router modem, the router modem itself, the wiring connecting that router modem to the internet service provider's interface, the interface itself with a fiber optic system that's called an ONT, or optical network terminal, and then outside the facility, beyond the facility, the wiring and the equipment of the internet service provider off premises. Here is a sample block diagram of what a typical home setup might be. Your device connects either wired or wirelessly to your cable modem router, which is connected through wires and splitters back to the interface equipment, the ONT. The ONT could be mounted on the outside of the facility or on the inside wall of the facility. In your home or office, wherever it happens to be, it might be in a utility closet where the power supply comes in. You'll find your breaker box there. Could be in that area. Or it could be on the outside of the home, again, where the power comes into the home. Those are the most likely places to look. Now, everything beyond this device is outside your reach. But there are ways to analyze and prove where the breakdown is happening. And if any of the first points are your point of failure, you can often diagnose and fix the problem yourself. So let's take it systematically. one step at a time, the points of possible breakdown. The first possibility, the one closest to you, your device. An easy check on it. Can another device connect to that router modem and through it to the internet? If it can, then the problem is your device. If you're unable to connect wirelessly, try connecting through an Ethernet cable if you can. Try it that way. This comparison will give you some important information. And consider these questions. Have you experienced a recent power fluctuation that might have affected your equipment? Have you zapped your device with static? That could cause a problem. Has a recent update of your operating system happened? One of our favorite operating system providers is infamous for pushing updates down to you, whether or not you want them, and regardless of whether they're going to break your system. Has that happened to you? Following through on these details is beyond the scope of the video, but if you can connect through your router modem to the internet with a different device, then that would indicate some kind of problem with the device that's not connecting. For you to diagnose this, if you're on a Windows system, I would suggest taking a look at Device Manager and taking a look at your updates. If it's possible to roll back the most recent update, give that a try and see if you get back to the condition it was before the update, and if that is still working for you to connect to the internet. If so, you know the update was the issue. Software or hardware, either one could be the problem. Device Manager could give you some hints as to which bits of hardware are not functioning properly. The next point of failure is your connection to the modem. What messages are being offered to you by your system? If you're connecting wirelessly, look at this. Can your device see the modem? Can your modem see the device? That's important information. Get into the administrator panel of the modem. Find out what is actually happening with it. And some modems have the possibility of blacklisting devices so that device with a certain ID number cannot connect. Check and see if that is perhaps the case. Now, if you're dealing with this, you're probably not the administrator and probably not the one who has done this, or you'd know all about it already. If you're connecting through a wired connection instead, even if the wire appears undamaged, either the connectors or anywhere along the length of it, try swapping the cable. It's unusual, but cables can fail. And if they're not properly seated, that's another possibility. Just unconnecting and reconnecting sometimes will be enough. Try swapping the cable. Something else for you to be aware of. If you have pets or if you have pests, be aware that animals sometimes like to chew on cables. And some cables may today have a coating or outside sleeve that is plant-based, and thus it has food value. It's an attractant to this kind of animal behavior. Just be aware of it. I had a friend who had to have the car completely rewired because pests had gotten into their wiring and chewed up all the insulation. Just be aware of it. So, if your connection is not the issue, what does the modem tell you? What do the lights say? Do the lights on the device indicate proper functioning? Even if they do, try a power cycle anyway. Reset it. If you're still getting the same results, then I'm going to suggest, if you have another router available, try swapping it out temporarily. See if the other router, obviously a known good one, see if the other router will connect for you. If it does, then you know the modem's the problem. I'm likely one of the exceptions in this case, because I presently have on premises 4 known good routers. 2 of them are the older technology by Action Tech, and 2 are the G1100 quantum gateways supplied by my internet service provider. I have 2 fiber optic lines coming to the house, so when the issue arose with one, it was easy for me to use known good equipment to do some sleuthing and compare one line against the other. One line was working, one was not. Why? By swapping routers around, paying attention to what was happening, I was able to deduce that the problem was beyond the modem, not the modem itself. By swapping a known good router into the line, you can determine whether the problem is with the modem or with something beyond the modem. Now, if you want to get back up and running today and you don't have a modem to swap, then you'll need to eliminate the other items, work by process of elimination. And the next step is to go to the wiring from your modem to the internet service provider's interface, the optical network terminal in our case, or ONT. How do you deal with that wiring? I showed you this diagram earlier. You have wiring from your modem router all the way back to the ONT. It's probably going to be coaxial, and it probably goes through splitters, at least one, maybe more than one. It may be difficult to work through all of those lines and splitters. So instead of trying to go back joint by joint by joint, just take the whole cluster as a clump, take and move that router all the way back to here. Get as close to the ONT as you can and connect it there. If you have the same issue here at this location as you had at the other, then you might assume that since it was working before and it isn't now, the wiring is probably good, and it's something beyond this point, either the ONT or further away. Now, one way of checking further is to take your modem and connect it to a known good line. And if it works there, you know the modem is fine. If your modem is fine, you've tried swapping other known good routers in, you're not getting any connection here to the World Wide Web, then the next step is to check the ONT. There are likely 2 parts to your internet service provider's interface equipment: the power supply and the interface itself. Start by taking a look at the power supply for the interface. It may look something like this. And what do the indicator lights on it say? It might look something like this. A lot less information. But if you've got green lights, then probably your power supply is okay. So the next step is to look at the ONT itself. As I said earlier, it could be on the outside of the building, or it could be inside. In either case, probably near where the power enters the facility. There is usually one screw holding the cover that your internet service provider says you can use this screw to access certain parts of the box. They don't want you to go any further than that. But inside that cover, you'll find a panel of lights, something like this. As long as all of those lights are green, one would assume that the ONT is functioning properly. You will have, likely, at least 4 green lights there. The one that says MoCA, M-O-C-A, may or may not be flashing. If you have an active internet connection going, it might be flashing. The battery light may or may not exist. If it's red, it indicates a problem. If it's off, it just means that you don't have battery backup for it. Some power supplies for the ONTs did have battery backup, but not all of them do anymore. Don't worry if there's not a light there at the battery, okay? But pay attention to what these lights are telling you. You might use your phone and take a picture of it. You've got documentation of what the status is of your ONT according to the LED readout. For me, everything to this point was checking okay. All the possible points of failure had been proven to be not failing. The ONT also appeared to be okay. But even if it was improbable, it seemed like the most likely. And one of the things that was pointing in this direction was this. I have two lines coming to the house, and one was working, the other was not. The one that was not working, the message that was coming up on the Windows machine that was trying to access the internet indicated, although it was connecting to the modem, it couldn't find the domain name server. No DNS found. A message to that effect. Once again, I have a working line. If the problem is with my internet service provider, the domain name server being down, then both lines would be down. To me, this also pointed back to the ONT. So I decided to do a power cycle, reset it. And I, unplugged the power supply and let it set for several minutes. Afterwards, I plugged it back in, let it power up, and after it powered up, everything worked properly. No change in the lights, same light display as before. Along the way, I did replace a couple of older coaxial cables that had originally been made for connecting VCRs and televisions back in the day, and replaced these cables with more recent cables that were specifically made for digital equipment. I also replaced a couple of splitters. Older coax splitters were not really designed for the frequencies at which signals are being transmitted through these coaxial lines today. And so the rule of thumb, your splitter should specify that it's good for at least 1.5 gigahertz. At least. Many modern setups will have splitters for them that are rated at something like 3 gigahertz now. Second rule of thumb, use a splitter that only has the number of connections that you actually need at that point, because you have loss, signal loss, at each splitter. And that means even if there's not a line connected to one of those connections. So for best signal transfer, if you only have 2 lines coming to the splitter, just have a 2-line splitter. If you have 3 lines coming, then get that. Get the size splitter that you need for that location. If I had not been able to get my internet back by this point, I would have had to call the internet service provider. Now, in my case, they do have an automated assistant that can automagically find and fix some problems. They'll say, I'm looking at your system and I noticed that this isn't working right. Let me see if I can reset that. And, this is all computerized. You're not dealing with a person. It's just automagically doing it. But had that process not worked, then they likely would have given me to a human being who would have tried to get me to upgrade my router. They would have told me that I needed new equipment. My G1100 router is out of date, and what I really need is a G3100 in order for my system to work properly. And that is hogwash. My system was working fine with the G1100 router before and after. And I knew about the G3100 too, and I didn't want it for some specific reasons. But there's no need for you to throw away perfectly good equipment to pay for other equipment that doesn't give you a good upgrade. I mean, if it's not really upgrading, why are you doing this? But I had enough information that I'd collected that I would have been able to argue with them and say, no, I need a technician out here because I have proven by X, Y, and Z that the problem is outside the home. It's either at the ONT itself or in your equipment beyond the ONT. So once again, your possible points of failure are your device, the connection to your modem, the wiring from the modem to the interface, the ONT itself, or wiring or equipment outside the home. Those are the possible points of failure. And you can do some sleuthing and figure out where the problem is. I hope my video has helped you solve your connectivity issues without you needing to go medieval on anyone, whether that be someone you're talking to on the phone or their equipment or anything. Stay safe, stay curious. I'll be back with another video. I would be interested in your results, your experience. Go ahead and give me your comments. I'd love to read about them. And if you have any questions, go ahead and post those too. I'll try to answer. Stay safe, stay curious. I'll be back with another video soon.